A fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one important thing.
Welcome to the Morning Hedgehog podcast, where we explore the business ideas that shape your success. Here are your hosts, Ira Gardner and Glennis Thomas.
All right, so welcome. It's so good to see you this morning. And do you have your coffee ready? I got my coffee.
Oh, no, I already drank it.
Okay. Well, I think that we need to have a little conversation about the times that we're currently experiencing. The COVID-19 pandemic is just so devastating worldwide to the economy. And I think that it's important for us as photographers to be able to think strategically through this crisis and figure out how we're going to respond to it. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that adversity tends to be, in my experience, a gift of opportunity. That there's always that silver lining that comes out of any tough new situation. And I'm thinking back to a story about one of my former clients that I worked with when I had the software business was a photographer out of Minnesota. And in fact, he was in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, so to speak. And when I first started working with him, he put a studio in a garage, and he ran a landline, just an extension cord of his phone line into the studio so he could have a modem connection to the internet. I was working with him on his business management software, and we were networking through that little modem, and he was just getting started. He was just a home-based business getting started. And then 9/11 hit, and we all remember the impact that had on everything shut down, airports shut down, businesses closed, and there was a big upheaval in the economy. What was really interesting is about a year and a half later, I got a phone call, and he just wanted to let me know that he had grown his business. He now had 5 employees, and he had just taken all 5 of his employees to Hawaii as a reward for having a great year. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And I said, how did that happen? I mean, this is post 9/11, the economy's down. He says, yeah, but you know what? After 9/11, people really valued family portraits. And it reminds me of that MasterCard priceless commercial that, photography became priceless. And
Yes.
so I remember, I like to keep that in mind as we face these current times. What have you been thinking about recently with all this going on?
I think it's gone in phases. And in the beginning, it hadn't really sunk in that this was going to be a long-term situation. So there was the opportunity to catch up on things that would be great to have done. And then when things go back to normal, we don't have to worry about those. So there was certainly that, and a lot of discussions of what I've seen online with people of what can they do. But I think that's the reality, that this is going to go on longer than people expected. And that when we start to flatten the curve, what is life going to be after that? I don't think it's going to go back to everyone just goes out their door and goes along their life anymore. So at this point, it's coming up with strategies of how are you going to serve people once some of the restrictions start to relax. And then in terms of what messages and how can you stay top of mind to your customers during this time, that's been one of my priorities. I know that studies have shown whenever there's a crisis that a lot of companies will just go dark in terms of their marketing strategies. But studies have shown that those that continue to stay top of mind will bounce back significantly faster. So, but you need to be smart about this. You don't want to be doing your regular sales pitches at this point. It's more about how can you be helping others? How can you be supporting others? You need to be acknowledging the situation. Anytime that you can talk about, I'm forgetting all the different things, but I think I actually wrote a post about this recently. But the key is just stay out there, be positive, be supportive, and then be connecting with some of your best clients one-on-one to ask them how you can support them. I think that's really important during this time.
I totally agree. And I think today I was thinking about what is our hedgehog concept of the day, so to speak. And this idea to me is that through this pandemic crisis is recognizing that our business success is really not based upon our products and services. It's based upon our relationships. And I really was thinking about this. My wife and I have been staying pretty sequestered in our home, but we thought about, we wanted to support a restaurant. And we thought about, well, gosh, which restaurant do we go to? There's so many that are out there. And of course, we went to Lenny's Thai Cuisine because I know the owner. It's E. He's my friend, and he's got his employees there. And I was so excited to see that. First, I wasn't even sure if they were open because I'm not sure, all businesses how they're managing the switch to a fully online ordering system. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I called and they took my order and I went in and I picked it up and I was thrilled to see that E, the owner, was working so feverishly fast. Cooking up this food. His whole kitchen was lined with orders. We go in there probably once every couple of weeks. I've never seen it that busy. And I know it's because of the relationships that he has created over the years, the friendship to where that was the first place I wanted to support. And the food was amazing. It was just absolutely wonderful.
That's fantastic. Yes. For some, that reminds me of another thing. For some of our customers, the way we can stay in touch through our marketing is just showing past work and tagging those customers. I've seen people who do portraiture and they're showing pictures that they took years ago. And it's not meant, the primary push here is not, I want to promote my business. It's something coming from the heart of the relationships you have with these longtime clients and saying something like, remember this, wasn't that amazing time? This is when your children were young. So it's just a real delight for these customers to see these old memories. I used Shutterfly years ago, and I used to put up all my kids' pictures there. And Shutterfly does this great thing where I get an email every few weeks that just posts some old memories from probably about 10 years ago. And I love getting those. And I forget that I have those images with Shutterfly. So just being able to share old memories is uplifting and nice. For me, since I focus on businesses, I've always had a strategy to promote the small business owners that I work with because everybody is happy for the promotion. So I am going, since I'm not shooting any new stuff right now, I'll be going back and start promoting older images that I did for past customers and re-promoting them again. Everyone needs to stay top of mind. Everyone loves the acknowledgement. So that's a way for me to provide some joy to my customers and then also get the word out about them. And it also helps me stay top of mind with everyone.
Yeah, one of the things I've been really thinking about is, in my fine art practice, one of the things that's been important to me is this idea of images of nature soothing the spirit. And so I've been revisiting and starting to launch a top of mind campaign that's focused on my black and white fine art botanical series. And I've had some of those converted into 5x7 greeting cards, folded greeting cards, that I'm just going through my files and picking out some of my key clients and physically mailing them. I'm fortunate enough that the grocery store I go to has a post office in it, and so I can still get stamps and I can still mail things. And I'm doing it not as an advertising, but as I think it's just a nice service to remind people that there's beautiful things to be grateful for. And I'm thinking of it as trying to share a gratitude campaign, if you will, as we go through this.
I love that. And it reminds me decades ago when I was young and in college and out to start my career and way overly serious. And I actually thought about photography as a career when I was young. But back then when I was way too serious and not very smart, I thought, oh, that couldn't possibly be. It's not a very serious career. It's not very important, right? And over the years, I have finally come to the realization how important art is for humankind. And in all times of life, but especially at this time, whether it's music, photography, paintings, it has such an important place, I think, right now, in what you said, soothing the soul, providing uplifting messages and encouragement. I just think as photographers, in some ways you can kind of think it's our duty to help others through our art at this time.
I totally agree.
Get all weepy-eyed, but
yeah, no, well, it was yesterday was a challenging day. I mean, we're just starting to get into the peak of the number of infections and deaths in our community, and we have elderly parents, and so we spent probably half a day doing large grocery shops and delivering groceries to our parents, and then of course getting groceries for our home as well. And it was such a sweet gesture at one of the stores we went to. They gave us a bouquet of daffodils. And it was just a free thing. And they were thanking people for the fact that they were making people wait into lines 6 feet across, and you'd go through the store. And for just being patient and kind, they were just giving this daffodil away. And I can't wait to make some photographs with that later today to be able to share, because I just think it's such a beautiful sign of spring. It's my favorite spring flower.
That's wonderful. Great story.
Thank you. One of the things I think we have to think about is this idea of paradigms, and that paradigms are the ways in which things get done. Business as usual. These are the rules that we live by. And one of the strategies that we have to have as an entrepreneur is this ability to recognize what is the current paradigm and when is it going to change. Because what we're looking at is potentially a complete new set of rules of how we do business in public spaces. Restaurants might have to look at cutting their tables, a number of tables in half to be able to create better spacing. And there's going to be some changes from this. And what's interesting about paradigms, there's a great futurist by the name of Joel Barker. He works with high-end corporations. I don't know if you ever came across him in your work in the banking industry, but he has a whole presentation about paradigms where he points out that when there's a new paradigm, everybody goes back to the starting point. Nobody has an advantage in that new paradigm. And so now is a really good time to start thinking about what that next paradigm might be. And the opportunity that exists for us now is the fact that I think we're going to really move even further in the e-commerce space, in which case the reliance on visual media, photography and video, the need for authentic branding is going to be so important that I think the value placed on photography by businesses is going to go much higher than it is already, because we're not going to be as often in a face-to-face environment. We're going to need those images to make the emotional connection at a greater level, a deeper level than ever before, I think, as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I hope so. Absolutely. Yeah, my mind is just racing right now thinking when you made the comment about the restaurants, and it's how everything is going to change. Everything's going to change. It's going to be interesting.
Well, my wife's from southern New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia, and there is a pizza restaurant in Spokane that has what is as close to East Coast Philadelphia style pizza as we can get in Spokane. So, friend of ours was saying, "Hey, have you been there lately?" And we thought, "No, we haven't done it." We thought we'll do checkout. And again, I went to see if they're open, so I Googled it on my phone, and it immediately took me to an online ordering system that was so slick, so easy to use, and it was like it took no work or effort to make that business transaction, and it was ready for me, and they had it just right on time. And then my wife had to teach me how to eat East Coast style pizza, where you have to fold it and flip it, because it's thicker at the end and thinner, and it flops if you don't fold it to stiffen it up. It was great fun. We had a good time, but I was just so impressed with the e-commerce ease of use, that so many e-commerce sites are not easy to use. And in particular, I think so many photographer e-commerce sites aren't particularly easy to use. And I think now is a good time for us to revisit that as we move forward.
Absolutely. There are, I try to explain to people that your marketing can only go so far. It can't go all the way to the actual sale. Those things have to already be set up and set up well. So if you can bring people over and get them interested, but then your ability to convert them into a sale is too many barriers. There's too many. If you're going to do it online, there's too many steps they have to go through, or they have to search for where that is. Or part of it is you start it online and you have to finish it offline. That every time that there is a barrier, then in studies it shows you'll have a drop off of potential buyers. So if somebody comes to your website and they are 3 clicks away to figuring out how to buy from you, that's too many. But a lot of sites, it's way more than that. They should know immediately. Some people are coming to your site because they've already know about you. They've already been doing their research. They're ready to buy. But if it gets too difficult for them to figure out what to do, you're going to see a drop off. Some people are going to figure that out once they get there, but I always tell everyone, at the very least, you need to always have on every single page, up in the top right-hand corner, your phone number, your email, and and the call to action, whatever that next step you want them to take. They should never have to search for how to get a hold of you or to take that step. But I was also thinking your comment about the paradigm shift, which is, I think, obviously the really important key takeaway of today's talk. But I also think, coupled with that, is as a small business owner, one of our greatest skills we must have is to be a problem solver. Mm-hmm. So as the paradigm shifts, we have to be able to look and go, so what are the new problems and how can I solve them? That's where the opportunity is. Everything's changed. What are the issues and how can I be a solution to that?
I always are telling my colleagues, my students, that as photographers, we need to sell solutions, not problems. And so often we end up selling partially complete solutions that end up creating more problems for our clients. I mean, we know that for the shoot and burn photographers, like wedding photography, where you just I shoot it, put it online, you download it, and years go by and the client still never has that book or that album, and they don't know how to order, they don't know how to turn it into wall art, they don't know how to design, do interior design work, etc. And so they end up not coming back because they don't have anything to really tell their friends and family about, because you didn't really solve their problem. So I totally agree with you that we have to exercise our problem solving skills as we move forward and start to pay attention. What are the new problems that are coming up?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I put together a list of 10 things that I think that we all could be doing during this this downtime. And I think it's an opportunity to, it kind of reminds me when I had my full-time retail studio with a lot of employees, that my easiest time was in the July, August, September, October months, where I was doing 8 to 10 photo sessions a day. Things were just cooking. It was busy, and I didn't have to think. I just knew what I was doing. But my actual busiest time of the year was right after the holidays in January, when there was virtually no business. That was when all the real work really, for me, the whole setup for success happened. And I feel like we've got kind of a little gift, if we can look at it that way, of a 4 to 6 week window for us to kind of retool and rethink about what we're doing with our business. So I came up with 10 things that I think that we can do to retool and learn some new skills over the next few weeks. And the first thing is, I thought about we can use this time to learn some new software editing skills. And in fact, I was really inspired. I'm going to share my screen with you. And a friend of mine sent me a happy music video the other day. And I was looking at it. I'm like, wow, this is really visually interesting and appropriate for the times we're in. So I'm going to share this a clip of this real quick. Okay, are we seeing my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
See.
Okay. Good. And I'll just go to I'll go to theater mode here.
Is there any music? I can't hear it.
You're still hiding in the park.
Might have to take some dance classes too.
Under the trees where you won't be found. And you're still dancing in the dark. It makes you happy when you're down, down, down. No one can see you spinning round and round.
Now, I'm going to stop that there. It's a fun, happy video. I'll put a link in our show notes. But there's some key points in it that you see this kind of manipulation of the image. And I ended up coming across this tutorial by somebody that calls herself Premiere Gal, and she focuses on video editing. And she has a tutorial about how to animate your 2D photograph and give it a 3D effect in After Effects. And just take a look at this real quick.
That's pretty cool.
Some pretty fun images.
Yeah.
That's what some of us might look like after a few weeks in the house.
Right.
So I'll post that tutorial on there as well. But I just thought, this is a great opportunity to dig in, because we're always busy. You're just always chasing after it. And so what a good time to learn. And then I thought about the fact that we really need to learn video editing. If you're not already doing video editing, which really, I hate to say it, is really about learning about audio and remembering to plug in your mic.
Yeah.
But it's really about learning audio, because so much interaction is storytelling is about hearing and the emotions associated with that. And so I think that's a great opportunity. I think about book design. If you're not working with a album design, or maybe working with Adobe InDesign, I mean, most of us have the Adobe Creative Cloud, but we're maybe only using one or two of the tools. And I think, for example, and I actually have a whole tutorial I'll post in our show notes on how to design an EPUB book using InDesign step by step, because this is a great opportunity for us to develop our marketing materials and leverage that technology to do that, as well as working with album design programs like Smart Albums or Fundy and that sort of thing. I do a lot of books in my work, and they just really are a nice way to create an artifact worth keeping. I mean, even my commercial clients, I've done commercial events where I end up designing a book that ends up being given out to all the vendors that were part of. Did a construction project where we photographed a grand opening of a building. Well, I made a whole book design, and that goes to all the vendors that participated in that construction. It's really a way to develop your portfolio and send it out.
That's fantastic.
So we're on our fourth idea, and that leads to my fourth idea, which is to go deeper in your knowledge of your particular area of photography. If you're a portrait photographer, now's the time to really explore, nonverbal communication, archetypes, and to put that lead generating white paper together that's become the expert in your community about the psychology of nonverbal communication. Great opportunity to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked about before, updating your website and really updating and fine-tuning your e-commerce solution for your customers, and try to see it through your customers' eyes. And in fact, maybe call up one of your pre-existing customers and say, hey, I'd like to try out my new e-commerce platform. I'm going to put a coupon code in here, but I'd like to go through the whole process and order something from me, and then give me feedback on it. That'd be a great way to do your own testing. Any thoughts on that one?
That's a great idea. You might even test it first with a family member, but just to make sure you get most of those glitches out of there. But there is a difference between a friend or a family member doing that testing and a client. They are going to think about it and experience it differently. So I think if you're really serious about serving your clients, you absolutely will try it on a few clients to get that feedback.
Yeah, and I think it's also a great way to potentially get some positive reviews. But I think the mindset is your friends and family are hoping to see success, so they'll overlook things, whereas your customers, they're going to pay attention to every bump in the road. And I think about this. I just been working with a fabulous contractor. I mean, I really, contractors can be difficult to work with if you've ever had a home build, if you've ever had a remodel job. And we just had a major remodel on our old barn, which really, as my neighbors said, well, that was never more than a big chicken coop. And ended up hiring this contractor to build me a new custom studio in this barn. And he did a phenomenal job, but for whatever reason, the back office system he uses sends me these bills and sent me these overdue notices that I'm like, well, wait a sec, I've already written you the check. And I would text the contractor and say, hey, what is this, another bill? And he's like, no, ignore it. You're all taken care of. And I'm like, it wasn't a very strong e-commerce solution that he chose to work with, because it was making me have anxiety as the customer over whether I did something wrong. And I think we need to really, iron those details out.
We never want to make our customers feel anxious or unsettled. So, and I also, to your point about I'm going to lose my train of thought, is an attitude to have when we get feedback from clients, because we know how it works. So if, for instance, if a client goes through a process and you're testing something or just your regular procedures, and they give you some feedback and you realize, well, they misunderstood. We still need to take that as feedback, because yes, people aren't going to get it. People aren't going to understand. We understand it because we put it together and we've done it a bajillion times. But the feedback of somebody misunderstanding is still important feedback, and always use that of, how can I make this even more clear? Instead of ignoring it and going, oh, well, they just didn't understand.
There's an expression that the confused mind always says no.
Mm-hmm.
And the confusion will cause people to shut down.
Yes.
And walk away. And I think a lot of photographers, we tend to be very technology driven. We're always buying the latest gear, and we're always quick to adopt the latest automation. And our clients are not necessarily like that. Our clients are not going to understand. And I go back to my favorite complaint, which is we end up expecting our clients to be interior designers and framers and Photoshop experts and color management experts, when the reality is that's our world, right? And so we need to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I brought up is on my list on number 6 was to work on your email list and communication strategy. Your email, in my opinion, is your most important business asset in the modern world, because I want to be able to communicate with my clients directly outside of the distraction of a social media platform. I want a one-to-one communication versus this one-to-many communication. And I think the companies that are going to struggle the most are going to be the ones that have not been able to get through the noise of the constant CNN or whatever social media, Twitter feeds of hearing the tragedies going on around the world. How do you get through that noise? And I think email is probably the most effective, and direct mail. And that's why I'm sending out those cards right now, is because I think I want to be an alternative to get away from all the stressors that people are already experiencing.
Yes, this topic is a little near and dear to my heart. So for brand new businesses, you're so overwhelmed with everything that you're trying to do. And one of the last things that people think about is building their email list. So I do encourage people, if you haven't built one yet, you need to start pulling from old records, old invoices, find your email database, start to put together a list. Because when you start off in business, you are trying to build clientele. You're going to probably spend more money and put more effort into getting business and drawing in new people. But as a business matures, if you do it right, then it starts to shift. And one of the statistics out there is that a mature business gets 80% of their business from their top 20%. Yeah, the top 20%.
It's the Pareto principle.
Clients.
Yeah.
But if you are new and you haven't been gathering your emails and then starting to talk to these people, when you start to hit the mid-level, you're gonna continue to be in that beginning stage. So to help you bridge past that, you need to start continuing to develop those relationships with people on an ongoing basis. Your past customers who have already experienced you, they already love you. They already know what you're about, so you're not having to reintroduce yourself. The conversation can be moved forward as opposed to when you're talking to brand new prospects. So, and if you have an email list and you haven't updated it in a long time, this is a great opportunity to do that. And if you have an email list but you've never segmented it into different audiences, now's a great time to start to do that, because you could put a bucket of people who are past customers of particular genres of photography that you offer, because what you want to say to your portrait clients is going to be very different than what you want to email to your commercial clients. You might want to put your influencers into a different bucket. And then what you can start to do is develop an email campaign. So you might put, if you're doing it, let's say once a month, you can start to figure out what's my main theme for each month. How can I set myself up so that the rest of the year can go smoother and I don't have to spend as much time on this. So I know what I'm going to talk about each month, and I know how I'm going to tweak that message for each of my different email segments. And when we were talking earlier about how we want to position ourselves in this terrible situation that we're in right now, that it's not about the hard sell, it's how you can be useful and still stay top of mind to your customers. So one of the things that I did recently was what I want to say to my email customers is different than what I want to say to everybody out in the general public arena. There should be a reason why they're getting this email as opposed to just following me on social media. So one of the things I did was I had photographed just some things about spring flowers around my own back garden, and I created some social squares. And I gifted those to my email subscribers. And I said, use these to promote your business, use these to spread messages of hope, however you want to use them, they're yours as a gift. And then I also did a little video tutorial of my secret little hack of how they can overlay text onto it without having to have Photoshop or anything like that. So anything that you can think of that is going to be a little bit extra, a little bit special to your email audience is going to keep them to want to stay subscribed to you and think very good thoughts of you. That's really important right now, right?
Right. Well, a lot of great information there. 3 things came to mind to me, if I can remember all 3. First thing related to this idea, the Pareto principle, and the fact that why businesses after 5 years have a much higher likelihood of success is because if you take the fact that you get 20% of your customers generating 80% of your revenue, after 5 years, that 20% starts to become 100%, and you can really have a solid platform, and you're only having to go out and attract 20% new business, new clients every year to offset the ones that either move out of the area, pass away, or any number of things. And that's the Pareto principle 80-20 rule. The other part of this is the expense associated with acquiring new customers. It costs 10 times more to get a new client. They call it client acquisition costs. 10 times higher to get a new customer than to get more business from an existing customer. So having that email list is really powerful. And then the other thing that we didn't talk about, and I actually do this on a regular basis, and that is we collect business cards from people everywhere we meet. And in fact, going back to our last episode when I told you about the flooring company owner that went door to door to knock, ask for business when times are tough, he actually told me something else that was really powerful. And he says, the most effective marketing tool I have is my business card. Because that advertising, he said the most important advertising, I should say, is his business card, because that meant that I shook the hand or I handed it to somebody directly, had a personal connection. Well, I collect cards, and then about every month, I will go through all my cards and I will add them into my email list. And so we do lots of things to generate email lists. I do art shows in wineries and other galleries, and I always have a sign up for my email list. Anytime I give a public presentation, I have a sign up for my email list. So I'm always getting those addresses but we have to take the time to categorize them. And I loved what you were talking about this is the time to segment those email addresses into different lists for different messages.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I'm going to throw in there about email, and this is probably a little controversial, but I actually, I use a Gmail account for my professional email, and I'll tell you a secret of why I do. My Gmail keeps track of the contact info of every person I've ever interacted with. Every person that has ever sent me an email. And so if you're looking for a quick way to build your first email list, go into your Google contacts and export that into a spreadsheet. And then you can start paying attention to all these people that I've had some form of interaction, and including other business owners that have sent me solicitations. Well, that should be a two-way conversation. And so I enjoy the way that automatically adds to my email list in addition to my sign-up forms on my websites, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, the more sophisticated CRM or customer relationship management tools, you have people who are plugging in all the different interactions and notes so that you have that history of each person in your contacts. But again, most of us are one-person shows, and that's a lot of work to do. So having that history that you can go back to in your Google contacts or go through your Google emails to bring you up to speed before you recontact someone is really important. If you can remember, names of their spouses or anything that they have, or anything in those past emails that you can bring back up that just makes that connection with them so much stronger. So yes, that's actually something that I started doing late last year, was moving all my contacts into my Google contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great place to put it. Now, why were you saying it was controversial? Are you sending your emails out through there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, or I'm using MailChimp for batch emails. I would think it'd be a little controversial because everybody wants to have their own domain name for their email, Ira at iragardner.com. And actually it's, I'm just using ira.gardner.photo at Gmail.
Yeah.
And I use it for my, I use Calendly to automate my appointment scheduling onto my calendar. And it just, there are ways to make your domain link to your Google account, your Gmail account, etc.
Which is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I need to figure that out. At some point I will, but it's kind of like, if it isn't broke, I'm not going to fix it.
Right.
So, but maybe now's the time while we have some
It's
time.
all about prioritization. Now, where's your biggest opportunity at this moment? Because there are too many things that we could be working on right now.
Yeah. Well, the next two we've already kind of addressed already. My number 7 item was just to recognize that business is not about products and services, it's about relationships, and that this is what will determine who survives this crisis. And then number 8 was this idea that maybe you can speak a little bit more to communicate on a personal level rather than a sales level. This is an opportunity to be truly authentic. And your business isn't separate from you. And so really you are your brand, and how you communicate right now is going to be a reflection on who you are as an individual. And I think this is a great opportunity. Some people talk about a work-life balance, and I'm like, well, actually it's really, I am my business. This is my career, and I love it. And I think one of the best examples I had of that was the time I spent with Bruce Hudson. I've watched Bruce work in his studio, and he just has so much fun with his clients, and that there is no separation, there is no distinction. It's just Bruce. And I really admire that. And I think that we have an opportunity right now to really dig into who we are and express that independent of the sales pitch, so to speak.
Right. And I think that goes back to checking in on your customers, and just it is not easy to know, how do I do that all by yourself? So I think it is a better approach is to start reaching out one-on-one, maybe through email, through some of your key clients, and just ask them, just how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help? What's going on in your life? And then listen to what they're talking about, because your customers are all doing things that we have no idea what's going on, right? So learn from that. And then that might give you some better ideas of what to talk about in some of your more broader messages, whether that's through an email campaign or through social media. But it's hard to know, and it might open up some ideas. For instance, one of the things I'm kind of wondering, and there's some people that I plan to reach out to today, is so in my headshot business, I get called in to do a group of shots whenever they've hired several new employees. Well, those jobs recently got canceled or postponed for now. So what are they doing? So I'm going to check in with people, ask what's going on in their lives. But I might also just say, so what are you doing for those people that you don't have headshots for right now? Maybe there's an opportunity for me, not necessarily to make money, but just to be helpful and to deepen those relationships. Maybe there's something I can help them with in the interim. Because I know they're not going to be able to replicate what I do for them. They have corporate standards across the country that they're not going to be able to do on their own. So I feel secure in that I'm not going to lose this work eventually. But if they're doing video chats all the time, sometimes people like to put up a headshot, a static one, when they're still in their robe and they don't want to necessarily be live on video chat. That's better than just putting nothing. I can help them just talk them through how to put together a decent headshot or whatever they need for their marketing pieces right now.
So I just had this flash in my head of you putting together a online class of how to protect your brand during a crisis, and talking about the ways in which you can manage your video chat presence, how you can light, how you can use light in your home office to accentuate a professional environment. Like, it could be a nice little segue into damage control, because there's a whole number of people out there that got thrust into this video chat world that were not ready for it and are not comfortable with it. And so, how do you get comfortable with being on a video chat environment? It could be an interesting thing. And then I've been doing screen captures when I have video chats and the light's particularly nice. I'll do screen captures and then I'll send it an email afterwards saying, wow, you looked really great in this particular moment of our talk today. My son, when I'm chatting with my son, he grew up hearing just one more shot, turn that way. And right. So I've been developing a collection of screen portraits of my son and his wife over the last couple of weeks. I'm always making photos. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is.
Absolutely. It's in our blood. We can't help ourselves.
Yeah. Well, so the other thing I was thinking about on this communicate on a personal level is not too long ago, I heard a wonderful business podcast where this CEO was talking about their habit was to try to write 10 personal letters a day, old-fashioned letters.
Yeah.
And we hear the axiom of less is more. And I think this is the opportunity to really embrace that. Okay, I don't need to send out 2,000 letters. Maybe I can just pick 10, or maybe I start with 5, and just start mailing those out. So I'm excited. I bought a new book of stamps yesterday, and I'm going to get that going today.
Excellent.
All right, just a couple more. We touched about a little bit earlier, but number 9 on my list is figure out where you can be of help at this time of crisis. can you host a free class about some facet of photography that is helpful for people that are under strain? Maybe it's how to organize family photos into a coffee table book. Maybe it's how to photograph your children, or how to teach children photography while they're being homeschooled. Any number of ways that we can leverage this video chat and social media to be able to offer some value to the community. And then, are there some essential nonprofits, profit services out in the community where we can spend our time helping and actually just set down the camera and go help during this time? Because I'm always reminded of a quote that says, people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And I think we have an opportunity to go out and make a difference.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's the center of my business, is how I serve the people and how I make each of my customers feel. And that definitely expands into this time. I love the idea of teaching people how to take pictures of their kids in this certain situation, and then maybe creating a memory book of this. I mean, this is hugely historical.
Mm-hmm.
And, and if the kids are creating, if they can write a letter or keep a journal and you add that in, I mean, what a piece of legacy history people can be creating for their family of what it was like during this time.
Closest memory I have to anything like this was the when Mount St. Helens blew up, and we were stuck inside for a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because of the air, you couldn't be breathing.
The air quality, because the ash. To me, I remember it as a month. Maybe it was only a week or two. I'd have to go back and look. But I just remember I did a lot of art, a lot of drawing, and I did a whole lot of research. I went back to school with this whole paper I did on the solar system, because my parents supplied me with all kinds of fun things to learn and do. The idle. What do they say? Idle hands are the work of the devil. Well, for me, as long as I'm learning something, I'm good. Just I can be the little hedgehog in that environment.
But if it is helpful to others, you don't have to necessarily limit how you're going to be helpful to others with just photography. So think of who your core audience is, or each of your different genres, and what's important to them right now as well. So for instance, one of my core audiences are marketing directors of offices. So I have been sending them some information that I have gathered of what can they be doing during this time to be doing their jobs well. And that has nothing to do with photography, but I can tell you I get the most feedback from people providing that information, because that's what's of importance in their jobs right now. They're thinking, what should I be promoting out there? What should I be doing within my job, and how can I be leading my office right now in this time? So it doesn't have to necessarily be about photography, but it's related, because what I do is my images are marketing images, whether it's a headshot or branding. They are marketing pieces. So it should be related to what you do, and it should be of value to whatever it is your target audience is experiencing right now.
Totally agree. And, I keep coming back. You talk about your kind of the ethos of your business is about making sure everybody is feeling good. My personal mission, and I think that's why we're doing this podcast, there's an African proverb that I just always keep in mind. And the expression is, I am because we are. And I think during this COVID virus, this is really reinforces that tremendously. So my last of my top 10 things is we need to keep photographing and we need to keep blogging. and that we have an opportunity to document the times in which we live. Several years ago now, I had an opportunity to do a documentary film about a Soviet-era photojournalist that moved to the United States. His name is Leonid Bragoltsev. I'll post a link in our show notes on that as well. And he had this passionate vision that the value of his photography wasn't for now, it was for 100 years from now, so that people might understand who we were. And he was always photographing with this idea of trying to share an understanding of the context with which we live under. And I think that we have an opportunity to really make the time and the space for reflective writing and sharing of our work. And I mentioned in our last episode that blogging for me has been the number one source for work coming to me. And it's kind of interesting because I mentioned the other episode where I'd gotten hired by a couple out of LA because of my blog. I since shut that blog down actually because I was getting too busy and I needed to take a break from it. I had some other things going on in my life, but now is the time to get back into that. And for those that are concerned about what am I blogging about, there's three things that you can do. There's three categories of blog posts that you can do. If you are wanting to research and do something new, you can start blogging about all your research and what your plans are and what your goals are and start sharing. And what you're doing by that is you're creating brand affiliation with the quality of the research that you're doing, is to get people to start, inviting them in on the ground floor to a new portfolio you might start working on. I might start a food photography blog. Who knows what I'm going to do, right? But right now I'm doing a lot of cooking. It might be fun. And then the second thing is when you're actually doing and creating the work, you do the behind the scenes photos and videos and sharing how's the process going. And that's the second stage of blogging. And then the third stage is when you've completed a major body of work to be able to talk about it holistically. What did it mean? What does it mean? And start sharing about all the ways in which people can access and see that work that's been completed. So those are three types of blog posts that you can easily do at any point in your career. And then, of course, the fourth category would be to just blog about your knowledge of the subject matter and sharing success stories with some of your clients and feature your clients in their blog. Feature your clients in your blog, I should say.
Yeah, that's great. I love that structure.
Well, we have covered 10 things that we can do, and I suppose we should add in there some self-care of maybe making sure we're getting some exercise somehow. I'm grateful to have a treadmill right now, but I think we have to take care of ourselves during this time. I don't know about you, but I spent a week on the couch binge watching TV when I was just kind of overwhelmed with the stress of it all. But now I'm just like, I got a lot to do. It's a busy time.
I can't say I spend a whole week, but I kind of go back and forth, right? And the motivation, there's times where I'm like gung-ho, and there's other times where it's just like, I'm not going to get anything done today. So when it's time to take care of yourself, take care of yourself. I think that we're certainly fortunate that we have a place to shelter in place and take care of ourselves, and we have food and so forth. But that doesn't mean that we're not dealing with a lot of the mental anguish and the worry of the world, and the issue of feeling a bit powerless.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot we can do. Our part is to shelter in place. But I certainly wish I could do more. I'm high risk with my asthma, so I'm not particularly comfortable going out there and volunteering. So I'm trying to find other ways that I can help the community. from my home. I actually started making masks for the medical community.
Nice.
I am not much of a sewer. I'm very slow, but that's in a way that also helps me with my self-care, doing something for others. So I do recommend making that part of your self-care is whatever you can do for others, do it.
Like you, I have underlying medical conditions that makes it a very high risk for me as well. And I think, the hardest thing right now is not being able to hug my son and my mother and father. And even when I'm delivering groceries, we got gloves and mask on, and, it might get an elbow bump, but actually not after going to the grocery store even.
Right. Yeah. So, it's not easy.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate our viewers and our listeners being with us, and we will look forward to our next episode of the Morning Hedgehog. And thank you so much for being here, and be well, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Hedgehog podcast. For show notes and more information, please visit us at www.themorninghedgehog.com.